It's my journey, it's your journey. You need my help and I need yours. 'Cause we are...
Welcome to Journeys of Faith. Brother Joseph Frey Aldenhoven here. Be sure to look at the description for special information of interest to you. Unraveling the mystery of Carmelite spirituality. In the quiet corners of Catholic tradition, where the echoes of ancient prayers mingle with the flicker of votive candles, there lies a spiritual path that feels both timeless and deeply personal. Carmelite spirituality. For those of us at Journeys of Faith, this sacred tradition isn't just a historical footnote, it's a living, breathing invitation to encounter God in the stillness of the heart. Founded in 1980 by Bob and Penny Lord after their life-changing discovery of the Eucharistic miracle of Lanciano, our ministry has spent over 4 decades walking alongside pilgrims, seekers, and believers, sharing the transformative power of faith through media, books, and guided pilgrimages. Carmelite spirituality, with its roots in the hermitic life of Mount Carmel and the profound teachings of saints like Teresa of Avila and John of the Cross, offers a roadmap to intimacy with God that feels almost countercultural in our noisy, distracted world. It's a call to silence, to contemplation, to a love so deep it can only be forged in the quiet of prayer. As we've journeyed through the sacred sites of Europe and the Holy Land, and as we've poured our hearts into the resources and retreats at our Holy Family Mission in Arkansas, we've seen how this spirituality resonates with so many families, parish groups, and faith leaders alike who crave a deeper connection to the divine. Bob and Penny often shared stories of their own return to Catholic devotion, sparked by loss and sustained by miraculous encounters. Their journey mirrors the Carmelite way, a relentless pursuit of God's presence, even when the path feels shrouded in mystery. In this article, we'll dive into the essence of Carmelite spirituality, exploring its origins, its pillars of prayer and detachment, and how it can inspire us today. Whether you're a lifelong Catholic or simply curious about the faith, we invite you to join us on this exploration, a journey of the soul guided by tradition and fueled by a longing for the eternal. Roots on Mount Carmel. Nestled in the rugged terrain of northern Israel, Mount Carmel stands as a silent witness to the ancient stirrings of Carmelite spirituality, a tradition that feels as old as the windswept cliffs themselves. This is where the story begins, in a place steeped in biblical weight, where the prophet Elijah once called down fire from heaven in a showdown of divine power against the priests of Baal. It's a landscape that hums with the raw energy of faith, a fitting cradle for a spirituality that would grow to emphasize solitude, contemplation, and an unyielding devotion to God. The Carmelites trace their origins to a group of hermits who, in the 12th century, sought refuge on this sacred mountain. These early seekers weren't just fleeing the chaos of the world, they were chasing something deeper, a direct encounter with the divine. Inspired by Elijah's fierce prophetic spirit, they built their lives around prayer and silence, dwelling in caves and small cells, their days a rhythm of solitude and communal worship. They saw themselves as inheritors of Elijah's mantle, called to stand in the presence of God and intercede for a world in desperate need of grace. What strikes me most about these early Carmelites is their radical commitment to detachment. They weren't just physically isolated on a mountain, they sought an inner wilderness, a stripping away of ego and distraction to make space for God alone. Their rule of St. Albert, drawn up around 1209, formalized this way of life, urging them to meditate day and night on the law of the Lord. It's a call that feels almost countercultural today, a reminder that true intimacy with God often requires us to step away from the noise and into the quiet. Mount Carmel, then, isn't just a geographical anchor for Carmelite spirituality, it's a symbol of the interior journey. It represents a return to the essentials, to a faith that burns like Elijah's fire, uncompromising, transformative, and alive. As I reflect on this foundation, I can't help but feel a pull to examine my own life. Where are the places I need to retreat to hear that still small voice? The Carmelites remind us that the mountain isn't just a place on a map. It's a state of the heart, always waiting for us to climb. Join us on a journey of faith with Carmelite spirituality. Hey there, fellow seekers of the divine. At Journeys of Faith, we're not just about uncovering the profound mysteries of Carmelite spirituality. We're inviting you to walk this sacred path with us, inspired by our founders Bob and Penny Lore's transformative encounter with the Eucharistic miracle of Lanciano. We've spent over 4 decades crafting resources and experiences to deepen your Catholic faith. Now, it's your turn to dive in. Here's how you can embark on this spiritual adventure with us. Explore our resources, grab a copy of our books or DVDs on saints, Eucharistic miracles, and devotions perfect for personal reflection or parish study groups. And we have many items that cover Carmelite spiritually, books, scapulars, etc. Join a pilgrimage, experience the holy sites of Europe and the Holy Land firsthand with our guided pilgrimages where faith comes alive. Visit Holy Family Mission, attend a retreat or conference at our Arkansas base for a heart-to-heart encounter with Catholic tradition. Connect digitally, stream our EWTN episodes or audiobooks to keep the inspiration flowing wherever you are. Let's unravel the beauty of Carmelite spirituality together. Visit our website today and take the first step on this journey of faith. Prophet Elijah, spiritual father of Carmel. Let's step back into the rugged, windswept landscapes of ancient Israel, where the fiery spirit of the prophet Elijah blazes like a beacon through the pages of Scripture. If you've ever felt the pull of a deeper, more intense connection to God, Elijah's story is your roadmap. This isn't just history, it's the beating heart of Carmelite spirituality, a tradition rooted in the kind of raw, unyielding faith that can move mountains, or in Elijah's case, call down fire from heaven. Picture this: Mount Carmel, a jagged cliff overlooking the Mediterranean, where Elijah stood alone against 450 prophets of Baal, 1 Kings 18:20-40. The odds were laughable, the stakes apocalyptic. Yet, with a prayer and a trust in God so fierce it could shatter stone, Elijah proved the power of the one true God as flames consumed his water-soaked altar. This wasn't just a showdown, it was a defining moment of divine encounter, a testament to a life wholly surrendered to the Almighty. For the Carmelites, Elijah isn't just a figure from the past. He's the spiritual father whose radical intimacy with God sets the tone for their entire way of life. Elijah's solitude on Mount Carmel speaks volumes. He wasn't a man of crowds or comfort. He sought God in the silence, in the still small voice after the storm, 1 Kings 19:12. This is the essence of Carmelite spirituality, a relentless pursuit of God through contemplation, often in the quiet corners of the soul. It's not about grand gestures for the world to see, but about an interior journey, a burning desire to hear God's whisper amid life's chaos. Elijah teaches us that true strength isn't in noise or numbers, but in standing firm in faith, even when you're the only one left standing. And then there's his zeal. Elijah didn't just pray, he lived his faith with a ferocity that challenged kings and reshaped nations. For those drawn to the Carmelite path, this zeal translates into a life of devotion and sacrifice, a call to be prophets in our own time, whether through quiet prayer or bold witness. His legacy on Mount Carmel became the spiritual bedrock for the Carmelite order, a place where generations of seekers would return to drink from the well of his example, finding in solitude and fervor a direct line to the divine. Our Lady of Mount Carmel, patron and guide. In the quiet heart of Carmelite spirituality, there's a figure who stands as both a beacon and a protector, Our Lady of Mount Carmel. If you've ever felt the pull of a deeper, more contemplative faith, you've likely sensed her presence. Even if you didn't know her name, she's the patroness of the Carmelite order, the one who tradition tells us appeared to St. Simon Stock in the 13th century, offering the brown scapular as a sign of her protection and a reminder of devotion. But she's more than a historical footnote or a devotional symbol. She's a guide, a mother, whose intercession has shaped centuries of prayerful souls seeking God's face. Picture this: Mount Carmel itself, that rugged, sacred hill in the Holy Land where the prophet Elijah once called down fire from heaven. It's a place of raw, untamed faith where the Carmelites trace their spiritual lineage Back to those early hermits who lived in caves praying in solitude. Our Lady of Mount Carmel embodies that same fierce, quiet strength. She's often depicted holding the child Jesus, a reminder that her role is to lead us to Him, to point us toward the heart of divine love. Wearing the scapular, countless faithful have felt her mantle over them, a shield against spiritual despair, a nudge toward perseverance. Her feast day, July 16th, isn't just a date on the liturgical calendar. It's a call to remember what the Carmelites hold dear, a life of prayer, of listening to God in the stillness, of trusting in Mary's intercession when the world feels too heavy. I've heard stories, personal, raw accounts from people who've turned to her in moments of loss or doubt, only to find an unexplainable peace. It's as if she whispers through the ages, keep climbing the mountain. Ein sehen Zeichen. I'm with you. Her presence in Carmelite spirituality isn't just tradition, it's a lived reality, a thread that weaves through every silent prayer and every longing for heaven. And let's not forget the brown scapular itself. It's not a magic talisman. No matter what some might think, it's a commitment, a wearable promise to live out the gospel with Mary as our model. The Carmelites teach us that wearing it means embracing a life of humility and service, of letting go of self to make room for God. It's a small, tangible thing that carries a weighty spiritual truth. We're never alone in this journey. Our Lady of Mount Carmel walks with us, her guidance as steady as the mountain that bears her name. Allegiance to Jesus Christ, the Carmelite way. Let's dive into the heart of Carmelite spirituality, where allegiance to Jesus Christ isn't just a pledge, it's a lived, breathing reality woven into the fabric of every moment. The Carmelites, with their roots stretching back to the hermits of Mount Carmel in the 12th century, have always been about one thing: a radical, unyielding commitment to Christ through prayer, silence, and sacrifice. This isn't a spirituality for the faint of heart. It's a call to strip away the noise of the world and stand before the Lord in raw, unfiltered devotion. Picture this: a life where every thought, every action is an offering to Jesus. For the Carmelites, this allegiance manifests in their deep contemplative prayer, often centered on the Eucharist and the Blessed Virgin Mary as their guide. They don't just pray, they dwell in prayer, seeking an intimate union with Christ that transforms the soul. It's no accident that saints like Teresa of Avila and John of the Cross emerged from this tradition. Their writings, brimming with passion and grit, reveal a love for Jesus so intense it's almost palpable. Teresa's Interior Castle isn't just a book, it's a roadmap to surrendering every corner of your being to Him. But here's the thing: Carmelite allegiance isn't locked in a cloister, it's a fire that burns for the world. Their devotion to Christ compels them to intercede for others, to carry the weight of humanity's struggles in their silent, hidden prayers. Think of it as a spiritual undercover mission. While the world spins in chaos, they're quietly fighting battles on their knees, aligning every heartbeat with the sacred heart of Jesus. This is faith with muscle, a loyalty to Christ that doesn't just comfort but challenges, pushing you to love harder, serve deeper, and pray without ceasing. Prayer and contemplation at the heart of Carmel. Let's dive deep into the soul of Carmelite spirituality, where prayer and contemplation aren't just practices, they're the very air that Carmelites breathe. If you've ever felt the world pressing in, drowning out that quiet voice of God, the Carmelite way offers a lifeline. It's not about escaping life's chaos, it's about finding the still, sacred center within it. Think of it as a spiritual reset button, one that's been honed over centuries by saints like Teresa of Avila and John of the Cross, who didn't just pray, they wrestled with the divine in the silence of their hearts. At its core, Carmelite spirituality is about intimacy with God through contemplative prayer. This isn't the kind of prayer where you rattle off a list of requests and call it a day. No, it's a slow, deliberate opening of the self, a sitting with the Lord in a space beyond words. Teresa herself described it as nothing else than a close sharing between friends, a conversation where listening often matters more than speaking. Imagine sitting with a lifelong companion where silence speaks louder than any monologue. That's the Carmelite ideal, a friendship with God that transforms every corner of your being. But don't mistake this for passivity. Contemplation in the Carmelite tradition is active in its surrender. It's a discipline, a daily commitment to carve out space for the divine, even when the world demands your attention. John of the Cross, with his raw poetic intensity, wrote of the dark night of the soul, where God purifies through absence, stripping away distractions to reveal his presence. It's not always comfortable, sometimes it's a grind, but it's in this refining fire that faith grows roots. For Carmelites, prayer isn't a luxury, it's the forge where the soul is shaped. This emphasis on contemplation also spills over into a life of simplicity and detachment. Carmelites aren't chasing worldly noise, they're letting go of it to hear God's whisper, whether in a cloistered monastery or in the bustle of lay life. This call to interior silence is universal. It's a reminder that you don't need to climb a mountain, though Mount Carmel's legacy looms large. To find God, He's in the quiet of your heart, waiting for you to stop, breathe, and listen. The interior journey from meditation to mystical union. Let's dive into the heart of Carmelite spirituality, where the soul embarks on a transformative trek from the quiet of meditation to the profound depths of mystical union with God. Picture this as a hidden path, one not paved with, neon signs or easy answers, but with silent struggle and an unrelenting pull toward the divine. The Carmelites, with their roots in the rugged solitude of Mount Carmel, teach us that this journey isn't a weekend getaway. It's a lifelong pilgrimage, often marked by both searing desolation and blinding glimpses of eternity. Start with meditation, the gateway. It's not just sitting cross legged with a vague sense of peace. No, for the Carmelites, inspired by giants like Saint Teresa of Avila and Saint John of the Cross, meditation is an active, deliberate turning inward. You're not escaping the world, you're confronting it, your distractions, your doubts, your restless heart, and laying them bare before God. It's raw, it's real. Saint Teresa described this as entering the interior castle, a labyrinth of the soul where each room draws you closer to the center, to Him. But don't expect instant gratification. This stage is work. It's showing up day after day to pray, to listen, even when the silence feels like a void. Then comes contemplation, the slow shift where you stop doing and start being. Here, words fall away. You're not steering the ship anymore. God is. It's less about your effort and more about surrender, letting the divine take over the conversation. St. John of the Cross, with his stark poetry, calls this the dark night, a stripping away of everything you thought you knew about faith, about yourself. It's unsettling. You might feel abandoned, lost in a fog of spiritual dryness, but this is where the Carmelites insist the real growth happens. In the darkness, God purifies, refines, prepares you for something greater. And that something greater, mystical union. This isn't a Hollywood ending with angelic choirs on cue. It's quieter, deeper, a oneness with God that defies description. Saint Teresa likened it to a marriage, a total merging of wills, where the soul no longer seeks itself, but only the beloved. It's rare, elusive, and not something you can force, but the Carmelites believe it's the ultimate destination of the spiritual life, the point where every longing, every sacrifice finds its fulfillment in God's embrace. This interior journey isn't linear. You'll circle back, stumble, and start again. Some days meditation feels like scaling a cliff with no rope. Others, contemplation offers a fleeting taste of heaven. Yet through it all, Carmelite spirituality reminds us that the struggle is sacred. It's not about perfection, it's about persistence, about daring to seek God in the quiet, the darkness, and the mystery. Community life shaped by love and silence. In the heart of Carmelite spirituality lies a paradox that feels almost like a sacred riddle, a life of profound community woven together by love yet deeply rooted in the discipline of silence. If you've ever wondered how a group of souls can be so united while spending much of their time in solitude, Let me take you behind the veil of the Carmelite way. It's not just a lifestyle, it's a deliberate, prayerful dance between connection and contemplation, one that has shaped saints and seekers for centuries. Picture a Carmelite monastery, whether it's the rugged cliffs of Mount Carmel or a quiet cloister tucked away in the countryside. The day begins not with chatter, but with the soft toll of a bell calling the community to prayer. The sisters or brothers gather, their voices blending in the ancient chants of the liturgy of the hours, a rhythm as old as the church itself. But once the prayers are sung, silence descends like a gentle fog. It's not an empty silence, though, it's a space deliberately carved out for God to speak. This is where the Carmelites teach us something vital. True community isn't built on constant noise or endless activity. It's forged in the shared commitment to listen first to the divine and then to one another. Love in this context isn't just an emotion, it's an act of will. Carmelites commit to loving one another through small, often unseen sacrifices, whether it's a quiet smile during a shared meal or a prayer offered for a struggling sister in the stillness of the night. Their rule, inspired by Saint Teresa of Avila and Saint John of the Cross, emphasizes this mutual charity as the foundation of their life together. But here's the kicker. They believe that without silence, that love can't fully bloom. Silence strips away the superficial, the distractions, and forces you to confront your own heart. Only then can you truly see and serve the other. I've often thought about how countercultural this is in a world where we're bombarded by notifications and endless streams of words. The Carmelites remind us that real connection doesn't always need a voice. Their communal life, structured around prayer, work, and meals taken together, shows that love can be a quiet force, one that binds tighter than any conversation. It's a lesson worth pondering. How much deeper might our own relationships grow if we dared to embrace a little more silence, a little more space for God to work within us? And so, as we delve deeper into Carmelite spirituality, let's hold on to this image of a community shaped by both love and silence. It's a balance that challenges us to rethink how we live our faith, not just in solitude, but in the messy, beautiful reality of being together. The scapular, a sign of protection and commitment. In the quiet heart of Carmelite spirituality, there's a tangible thread that binds the faithful to the divine, a simple piece of cloth that carries the weight of heaven's promise. The brown scapular, often associated with the Carmelites, isn't just a relic of medieval piety, it's a living emblem of protection and a whispered covenant between the soul and the Blessed Virgin Mary. Picture it, two small pieces of wool connected by strings, worn over the shoulders, resting against the chest and back. It's unassuming, almost mundane, yet it holds a story of devotion that stretches back centuries to a vision on Mount Carmel. Legend and faith tells us that in 1251, Our Lady appeared to St. Simon Stock, a Carmelite prior, in a moment of desperate prayer. The order was struggling, teetering on the edge of collapse under persecution and internal strife. Mary, ever the mother, offered a lifeline, the scapular, a sign of her maternal protection. She promised that whoever wore it with devotion would not suffer eternal fire, a bold, almost audacious assurance that has echoed through the ages. But this isn't just about escaping damnation, it's about commitment. Wearing the scapular is a pledge to live a life of prayer, purity, and surrender to God's will under Mary's mantle. Dig deeper, and you'll find the scapular isn't a magic talisman. It's not a get out of hell free card for the apathetic. The church, in its wisdom, reminds us that it's a sacramental, a physical reminder of a spiritual reality. It calls the wearer to embody the virtues of the Carmelite tradition: contemplation, humility, and an unshakable trust in divine providence. Think of it as a silent prayer stitched into fabric, a constant nudge to align your heart with the rhythm of Mount Carmel's silent, prayerful peaks. For those who wear it, the scapular becomes a personal story. I've heard accounts of soldiers in battle clutching it like a lifeline, of mothers tucking it into their children's clothing as a shield against unseen dangers. It's not superstition, it's a visceral act of faith, a way to say, I belong to you, Mary, and through you to Christ. And in a world that often feels like it's unraveling, that sense of belonging, of being claimed by something greater, is a quiet rebellion against despair. Saints Teresa of Avila and John of the Cross as teachers. Let's dive into the heart of Carmelite spirituality with two of its most towering figures, Saint Teresa of Avila and Saint John of the Cross. These aren't just saints on a pedestal, they're gritty, real, and deeply human teachers who wrestled with the divine in ways that still resonate today. Their lives weren't polished or easy. Think less serene holy card and more spiritual battleground. They faced doubt, opposition, and even imprisonment, yet emerge with insights that can guide anyone hungering for a deeper connection with God. Teresa, often called the doctor of prayer, didn't just write about talking to God, she lived it with an intensity that could unsettle even the most devout. Her seminal work, The Interior Castle, maps out the soul's journey to union with God as a series of mansions, each room a step closer to the divine, but also a confrontation with your own flaws and distractions. She's candid about the struggle. Prayer isn't always blissful. Sometimes it's a slog through dryness and darkness, but she insists, almost like a friend shaking you awake, that perseverance transforms. Her message: God is waiting in the deepest chamber of your soul. Don't stop seeking Him, no matter how messy the path. Then there's John of the Cross, the mystic poet who gave us the dark night of the soul. If Teresa is the guide urging you forward, John is the one sitting with you in the shadows, explaining why the light feels so far away. He teaches that spiritual growth often comes through purification, stripping away attachments, even the comforting ones, to rely solely on God. His dark night isn't just despair, it's a necessary unraveling, a shedding of the ego so raw it can feel like abandonment. Yet through his poetry and prose, he reveals a profound truth. This emptiness is where God reshapes you. His words aren't abstract theology, they're born from his own suffering, including being locked in a tiny cell by his own religious brothers. Together, these Carmelite giants offer a spirituality that's not for the faint of heart. They don't promise quick fixes or shallow comfort. Instead, they challenge us to embrace both the ecstasy and the agony of drawing near to God. Their teachings on prayer, detachment, and trust in the unseen are like a roadmap for the soul, one that's been tested in the crucible of their own lives. For anyone exploring Carmelite spirituality, Teresa and John aren't just historical figures, they're companions who've walked the path and left behind a trail of hard won wisdom. Little Thérèse and the little way of spiritual childhood. Let's pause for a moment and step into the quiet, unassuming world of Saint Thérèse of Lisieux, often called the Little Flower. If Carmelite spirituality is a vast ancient tapestry woven with threads of silence and contemplation, Thérèse is the delicate stitch that somehow catches your eye, drawing you closer. Her story isn't one of grand gestures or earth shaking miracles, at least not in the way we often imagine them. Instead, it's a tale of is seen smallness of a young woman who found God in the mundane, the overlooked, the everyday, and in doing so, she crafted a path, the little way, that speaks directly to those of us who feel ordinary, who wonder if our quiet lives can ever matter in the grand scheme of heaven. Therese entered the Carmelite convent at just 15, a tender age even by the standards of her time in late 19th century France. Behind those cloistered walls, she didn't chase after heroic feats of penance or mystical visions, though she admired the giants of her order like St. Teresa of Avila and St. John of the Cross. No, Therese's revelation was simpler, almost disarmingly so. Holiness isn't reserved for the extraordinary, it's accessible right here, right now, in the way you fold laundry with care, in the smile you offer when you're exhausted, in the silent prayer you whisper when no one's watching. Her little way of spiritual childhood is about trusting God like a child trusts a parent, completely without reservation, knowing that even the smallest act of love can be a step toward Him. What hits hardest about Therese is how relatable she is. She battled self doubt, wrestled with feelings of inadequacy, and even faced the darkness of spiritual dryness in her final months as tuberculosis claimed her at just 24. Yet through it all, she clung to this idea that God delights in our littleness. She once wrote, "I am a very little soul who can offer only very little things to the Lord." And isn't that most of us? We're not scaling mountains or founding orders. We're just trying to get through the day with a bit of grace. Thérèse reminds us that's enough. Her way, rooted in Carmelite silence and surrender, teaches us to scatter small flowers of kindness and trust, believing that God sees every petal. This path of spiritual childhood isn't about infantilizing faith, it's about radical humility. It's about stripping away the need to prove ourselves and resting in God's mercy. For Carmelites and for anyone drawn to their spirituality, Therese's little way is a quiet revolution. It's a reminder that the desert of the heart, where God often speaks, doesn't always require grand pilgrimages or dramatic renunciations. Sometimes it's found in the kitchen, in the classroom, in the unnoticed corners of our lives where we choose love over indifference. A call to deepen your Carmelite journey with journeys of faith. As we unravel the profound layers of Carmelite spirituality, it's clear this ancient path isn't just a relic of history, it's a living, breathing invitation to encounter God in silence, prayer, and surrender. Here at Journeys of Faith, we've walked these sacred roads ourselves, from the Eucharistic miracle of Lanciano that changed Bob and Penny Lord's lives in 1980 to the countless shrines we've explored with pilgrims like you. We've seen how the Carmelite way, with its focus on contemplation and intimacy with Christ, can transform hearts. We invite you to dive deeper, whether through our extensive library of books and DVDs on saints and devotions, or by joining us on a guided pilgrimage to holy sites across Europe and the Holy Land. Let us be your companions on this journey. At our Holy Family Mission in Arkansas, we host retreats to nurture your spirit, echoing the Carmelite call to stillness. Inspired by over 4 decades of evangelization on EWTN and beyond, Journeys of Faith offers trusted resources to enrich your faith. Step into this mystery with us. Let's uncover the divine together, one prayerful moment at a time. FAQs about Carmelite spirituality. What is Carmelite spirituality? Carmelite spirituality is a profound journey of faith rooted in a deep personal relationship with God through prayer, silence, and contemplation. Originating from the Carmelite order, it emphasizes a life of interior stillness and a constant turning toward God amidst the noise of the world. At Journeys of Faith, we've been inspired by this tradition as we've walked our own path of rediscovery, much like Bob and Penny Lord did after the transformative encounter with the Eucharistic miracle of Lanciano. It's a spirituality that invites you to listen for God's whisper in the quiet of your heart. Who founded the Carmelite order? The Carmelite order, formerly known as the Order of the Brothers of the Blessed Virgin Mary of Mount Carmel, traces its origins to the 12th century on Mount Carmel in the Holy Land. A group of hermits inspired by the prophet Elijah's example of solitude and prayer gathered there under the guidance of St. Berthold. Later, St. Simon Stock played a pivotal role in shaping the order, particularly through his vision of the Blessed Virgin Mary, who entrusted him with the brown scapular, a symbol of Marian devotion central to Carmelite life. Their legacy continues to inspire us at Journeys of Faith as we guide pilgrims to sacred sites like these. What are the key themes in Carmelite spirituality? Carmelite spirituality centers on several enduring themes: prayer as a way of life, contemplation as a means of union with God, and a profound devotion to the Blessed Virgin Mary. It also emphasizes spiritual detachment, letting go of worldly attachments to make room for God and the pursuit of interior silence. These themes resonate deeply with our mission at Journeys of Faith, where we strive to foster spiritual encounters through pilgrimages, retreats, at our Holy Family Mission in Arkansas, and resources on saints and devotions. How does Carmelite spirituality differ from other Catholic spiritualities? While many Catholic spiritualities focus on active service or communal worship, Carmelite spirituality leans heavily into the contemplative life. It's less about doing and more about being present to God in silence and solitude. Unlike the structured prayer of the Benedictines or the missionary zeal of the Jesuits, Carmelites prioritize an interior journey, seeking God in the inner castle of the soul. as St. Teresa of Avila famously described. At Journeys of Faith, we've seen how this complements other traditions, enriching the diverse tapestry of Catholic faith we share through our media and pilgrimages. Who are the most famous Carmelite saints? The Carmelite tradition boasts spiritual giants like St. Teresa of Avila, who reformed the order and wrote masterpieces like The Interior Castle, St. John of the Cross, whose poetry and teachings on the dark night of the soul guide countless seekers, and St. Thérèse of Lisieux, the Little Flower, whose little way of simple, childlike trust in God has inspired millions. These saints are cornerstones of our work at Journeys of Faith, featured in our books, DVDs, and EWTN broadcasts as beacons of hope and faith. What role does prayer play in Carmelite life? Prayer is the heartbeat of Carmelite life. It's not just an activity, but a state of being, a continual conversation with God that permeates every moment. Carmelites practice both vocal and mental prayer, often spending hours in silent communion with the divine. This mirrors the heart of our ministry at Journeys of Faith, where Bob and Penny Lord's own rediscovery of faith through prayer fuels our commitment to sharing trusted Catholic teachings on the Eucharist and devotions. What is interior silence in Carmelite tradition? Interior silence is the sacred space within where one hears God's voice. In Carmelite tradition, it's about quieting the mind and heart from distractions, fears, and desires to simply rest in God's presence. It's a discipline that takes practice, often cultivated through solitude and meditation. At Journeys of Faith, we've seen how retreats at our Holy Family Mission in Arkansas can help believers find this silence, mirroring the Carmelite call to inner peace. How does contemplation fit into Carmelite spirituality? Contemplation is the crown jewel of Carmelite spirituality, a deep, wordless prayer where the soul gazes upon God with love and surrender. It's not about intellectual understanding, but about experiencing God's presence directly. St. John of the Cross described it as a loving awareness of God, often reached after passing through spiritual trials. Through our pilgrimages and resources at Journeys of Faith, we aim to guide others toward these transformative encounters with the divine. What is meant by spiritual detachment? Spiritual detachment in Carmelite teaching means releasing one's grip on worldly things, material possessions, ambitions, even personal desires, to create space for God. It's not about rejecting life, but reordering priorities so that God is at the center. St. Teresa of Avila and St. John of the Cross both stress this as essential for spiritual growth. At Journeys of Faith, we've learned through Bob and Penny's own story of loss and return to faith how letting go can open the door to deeper trust in God. How important is solitude in Carmelite practice? Solitude is a cornerstone of Carmelite practice, reflecting the order's hermit origins on Mount Carmel. It's in solitude that Carmelites carve out time for prayer and contemplation away from the distractions of the world. While modern Carmelites balance this with community life, the call to solitary reflection remains vital. At Journeys of Faith, we echo this through our guided pilgrimages to quiet, sacred spaces and retreats where individuals can step away from daily noise to encounter God. Thanks for listening to Super Saints Podcast. Be sure to click the link in the description for special news items.
It's your journey, but we won't make the trip alone, 'cause we know God will lead us home. It's our journey of faith, it's our journey.